Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my performance review of the Converse Shai 1. So yeah, this shoe retails for $130, which I think is a pretty dang good price for a first signature shoe, especially since it's the MVP's signature shoe. But yeah, this is the clay colorway, and this colorway is inspired by his wife's eye color, which I think is really sweet. I think that's really cool. But yeah, we do have an all black and also kind of like a light blue colorway. But yeah, this shoe looks really clean. I do like how it looks. So if you guys do want to cop, I try to leave in the free link in the description box. And if you do choose to get this shoe, just help me out if you buy it through the free link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. And also, if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. I try to check all my DMs and reply to you guys. So yeah, my Instagram will be right over here as well. But let's get it started right off with the tracciones. And yeah, the traction was really not good. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. You know what I mean? Like right when I got it, it wasn't biting too well. And then for the first couple of times I've actually played in these, the traction wasn't amazing. You know what I mean? So you definitely do need to break it in. But after breaking it in, the traction is really freaking nice. So on a clean court, you have a really nice bite. But you have to be playing on an immaculate court, right? If you're playing on an immaculate, super duper clean, squeaky clean court, you're gonna have an amazing stop. And I really enjoyed playing in the shoe when I was playing on a very clean court. And also I did play with, I was actually testing out the edge, kind of like matte with their spray. And then when I used this shoe with that matte combination, the traction was freaking phenomenal, guys, right? But if you are playing on a dusty court, this shoe does pick up a good amount of dust, right? Also, this shoe is pretty dang silent at first, but once you break it in, it does start to squeak a little bit more, especially if you're playing on a clean court. But if you're playing on even like a slightly dusty court, like doesn't squeak too much either. I mean, obviously with dust, shoes don't squeak as much, but this gets super duper silent on even like a little bit of dust, you know what I mean? But again, squeak has nothing to do with performance, but yeah, it doesn't have like the loudest squeak, you know? But now moving on to the dust performance, yeah, I mean, slightly dusty court, I could get by it, right? It wasn't terrible, but it picked up dust very quickly and it was affected by dust a lot, you know what I mean? And then, you know, when I wiped, it had a pretty good bite, but then I just didn't feel like it had as hard of a stop when I was playing on a really super duper clean court. So even on a slightly, like if you're playing on a super clean court, I would say like 9 out of 10. Very nice traction, right? But slightly dusty court, I would say like 7.5 out of 10. You know what I mean? Even on a slightly dusty court, it wasn't amazing. But then once you get on like a moderately dusty court to a super dusty court, this shoe picks up hella dust and it's affected by dust a lot. And you start to slide around like crazy. So dust performance is not great, right? So which kind of sucks. That was kind of like the Achilles heel. I wouldn't say it was the worst for like slightly dusty courts, you know what I mean? Because I play on slightly dusty courts most of the time, but when I went to like the 24-hour fitness courts, which are super duper dirty, where I go to, I really didn't like playing in the shoe because again, I was sliding around a lot. One thing I like about the outsole though is that it has a little bit of a rounded shape. It's not like a crazy outsole curvature, but we do have a little bit of a rounded shape here and also the rubber coming up here on the medial side. So you can do crazy movements like these. You know, Shai gets really low to the ground and he does a lot of these types of movements on like crossovers and stuff like that. So that feels pretty nice. It reminds me a little bit of like the Kyrie like 5, you know what I mean? Kyrie 6, not like the Kyrie 2 through 4, which are crazy for the outsole curvature, you know? And also for durability, no. Like I don't know what they were doing, but the grooves are so freaking thin. The grooves are kind of deep though, but the grooves are super duper thin. And also the rubber is extremely soft. So this will rip and just tear off on outdoor court, I feel like. So probably not recommended for outdoor use. But yeah, the traction, you do need to break it in. And if you're playing on a clean court to lightly dusty court, I feel like you're gonna have a good time. But super dusty to moderately dusty court, definitely not the best. So there's the traction there. Moving on to the heel to toe transition. Overall, it does feel pretty smooth, but here in the heel, I wish they wouldn't have caged it so much. Look at this. You know, you have this kind of like Phylon foam, I'm guessing that they're using, but it is very caged with this plastic, and this plastic's pretty freaking stiff, guys. Look at this. You know what I mean? So it does cage it and make the overall like heel compression a little bit stiffer. So it's not the smoothest feeling heel to toe transition. Like comparing it to a shoe like the Fresh Foam BBV3, like this is super duper soft. I really like the heel to toe transition, especially here in the heel. The Shai, again, it's not like super clunky and super stiff comparing it to, I don't know, like the A82, because the A82 was terrible. You know, this is, it literally feels like there's a plastic wedge right here, which I didn't like for heel to toe transition. It's not as bad as that, but it does feel a little bit like stiffer and a little bit clunkier, right? But we do have a little bit of a curve shape, so it's not terrible, but I just wish it was a little bit softer in my personal opinion. But I feel like most build you'll be fine, right? And then here in the forefoot, we do have a nice curve shape, so that does feel nice as well. And then here in the forefoot, look at this. It's very, very easy to flex now. You know, I broke it in, and it's like super duper easy. Torsional support also doesn't seem like the best either, but it does have a very, very flexible forefoot. So yeah, you're gonna be using your foot a little bit more, you know, out of your first step and stuff like that. That's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it just depends on what your preference is. You know, comparing it to a shoe that has a stiff, kind of like springy, explosive feel, this is a very soft, more flexible feel, you know what I mean? So overall heel to toe transition is very, very smooth. Right here in the forefoot, but then here in the heel, it's not bad, but a little bit on the stiffer side of things, right? So there's that. Moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup is definitely a pretty big letdown for me, because I was playing in a lot of shoes that have great cushion, right? So first of all, again, like the Fresh Foam BBV3, you know, these were all in my rotation, right? This has great cushion. The Jordan 40 also, I took this shoe in just to kind of like test it out compared to the other shoes, and this shoe has amazing cushion as well. Even the A82, you know, the underfoot cushion is very, very nice, right? The A82, it feels really nice for underfoot cushion, although it's like really thin. Also, this shoe has better court feel than the Shai one, you know what I mean? So that's the thing that sucks, right? The court feel isn't the best in the Shai one, especially comparing to like the Sabrina 3. So the Sabrina 3, the Jaw 2, you know, the A2 have really nice court feels, right? And it's like the lowest to the ground court feel that you can get pretty much, you know what I mean? So you have great court feel in these. And then it's a little bit higher up off the ground here in the Shai one. I would say it has slightly better court feel than the Jaw 3, however, you know, just a tiny bit. So I would say this is around average to like slightly better than the average for the court feel, right? So, but it's not like that much better for cushion than the Sabrina 3. You know, but I feel like, I guess I'm nitpicking a little bit. I mean, I'm not doing a comparison, but just so, you know, I feel like the Sabrina 3s are very, very popular. I talk about these a lot, and people just know how they feel, you know, especially the Sabrina 2 and 3. So that's why I'm comparing it. But anyways, we do have a forefoot zoom unit. It says Air Zoom right here. And it doesn't feel super duper nice, especially comparing to the Tatum 4. I was playing on the Tatum 4s, and the Tatum 4s are super nice for that zoom unit. It's super soft, there's a nice bounce as well. But here in the Shai 1, it just feels like it's a targeted zoom unit first of all, but also it like protrudes up a lot. You know, it feels almost like a speed bump, just like right here. You know what I mean? So that kind of like made my forefoot, you know, come up a little bit, and it has a little bit of compression, just a tiny bit of bounce, but I would say it's not as much as a Sabrina 3. Maybe it's around the same, but for me, when I was playing both of these shoes, even at the same time, it felt like the Sabrina 3 had a little bit more compression, but also had a nice kind of like flatter feel too. So wasn't a huge fan of that, you know what I mean? But also with the, I'm guessing they're just using Final, right? But again, they don't have nice heel compression. But overall impact protection, I would say is okay. It's not something like where you're gonna feel like you're bouncing on like a trampoline. It's not super bouncy or like soft like a marshmallow, but my feet didn't really hurt too much, you know what I mean? So it was okay for the impact protection, but like overall it's like lackluster, you know, there's nothing amazing about it. Impact protection, again, core feel, bounce, underfoot feel. Even the underfoot feel is pretty stiff, you know what I mean? So I would even say the Sabrina 3 is better because you are lower to the ground, but you have better heel compression. You have a nice kind of like flatter feel with a little bit more of a bouncier feel here in the forefoot, you know? So this is a little bit better. Jaw 3 has better cushion as well with the Zoom X. So it's a little bit of a letdown, but I guess if you are looking for like a responsive cushioning setup, you want something a little bit stiffer with something like okay for impact protection, like not terrible at all, then I guess this is good. But for me, especially since I was playing in a lot of other shoes with way better cushioning setups, the Shai one is a little bit lackluster, you know, it's a little bit disappointing. So there's that. Moving on to the upper. So for the upper, they are using a kind of like a shroud material, right? Obviously you have the zipper, and it does have a really nice kind of like laceless look, you know? But yeah, underneath the material, you have a mesh material. It's like a really open, really thin mesh material, right? And then on the sides in the midfoot area, we do have these kind of like straps that do turn into the eyelets. The laces go through it, obviously. But then of course we do have the shroud material, and here in the toe box, you have a little bit more of a fuse, right? And it does stiffen up the material here in the toe box, you know? So you do have a pretty nice supportive feel. But then on top right here, it does get really soft, especially with this kind of like molded upper here with this very interesting pattern. It gives it a nice kind of like cozier feel, almost a little bit, you know, but it's still really thin. Look at this. You know, once you break it in, it gets really soft. Look, it's really, really soft. You know, it's really thin, it's really soft. And when I first got it, it felt a little bit stiffer and a little bit thicker for some reason. But once I broke it in, because it's so soft, like I don't really mind it. You know, it's definitely not as thin as like the Sabrina 3, don't get me wrong. But I feel like once it got like this soft, you know, after breaking it in, it does feel a little bit thinner to me for some reason, you know? And also for the tongue, we do have this crazy kind of like indented shape. So it kind of like goes over like the top of your foot or like your leg, in front of your leg, but it does have like a little bit of padding. It's not super cozy, not super thick, but it does feel kind of cozy, kind of comfortable on top of your foot. It's also like a one booty upper construction a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, so obviously we do have the tongue, but then the tongue is a little bit separate, but it does attach to the actual mesh material that goes all the way here into the midfoot and forefoot area, you know? So it's almost kind of like a one booty construction almost, you know, but more like a half booty, you know, like 3/4 booty, you know. And then here in the ankle area, we have actually here on the sides pretty minimal padding. Like the foam is very not super thick, but it's kind of thick, like right on top, but it's very targeted, you know. And underneath that, like a little bit lower than that, it's very minimal, you know. And then here in the back of the shoe, you know, where your Achilles is, it does have a little bit more padding, but overall it's a pretty minimal feel as well. And then here in the back of the shoe, we have the Converse logo with the same kind of like plastic material. And also, by the way, the plastic does scuff up a good amount. You know what I mean? So I guess when I play, I do hit my feet a little bit like this. So just be careful with that. It does scuff up. Not a huge deal, but I mean, with this colorway, you can't really tell too easily, but it does scuff up. So yeah, overall, I actually really like it. You know, it broke in very nicely. It actually got really soft, and it does feel like more on the minimal side of things now. You know what I mean? So, and also the quality, I feel like is pretty nice. It looks like it held up pretty nicely. I guess besides here, it is kind of scuffing up here as well. This is a softer material with this kind of like molded material, as you guys can see. So that didn't hold up too well, but overall, the quality seems pretty nice for the price, and it feels pretty nice on foot. Didn't really have any issues with the zipper coming down for me either when I was playing in it, you know, like in the Donna Shoe 7. So yeah, there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit. So I went true to my Nike size, and the shoe fits me pretty dang well, but it's not like a super snug fit now, you know what I mean? So lengthwise, I'm good to go. Like if you know what size you are in Nikes, you should be fine going true to size. Length, I'm good to go, right? But here in the toe box, it's not super snug for me now, you know what I mean? Like something that's super duper snug and a little bit more like tight in the toe box for me is like the Sabrina 3 and the Jaw 3. Like these are pretty dang snug, right? The Shai 1, I would say, is a little bit looser than that. Yeah, it's still a pretty nice kind of like normal snugness, I would say, or maybe a little bit more snug than that, but it's not like super snug anymore, you know? So that feels pretty nice, you know, if you want more like a looser, not super snug fit, you know what I mean? But for me, I like to have a really snug fit. So I like the Sabrina 3 and Jaw 3 fit a little bit better. But again, it's not anything super roomy or anything terrible, right? And width-wise, it's around normal width as well. You know what I mean? So like it's not squeezing the side of my foot too much. It just feels like my pinky toe, ring toe, it just feels like it's a little bit more like resting there. You know what I mean? So yeah, overall width is also pretty nice for me. So yeah, if you know what size you are in like the Sabrina 3 or the Jaw 3, then you should be fine going the same exact size here in the Shai 1s. However, it's just gonna be a little bit looser on all ends, like the toe box and the width, just not the length. The length is pretty similar as well. So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. Support and lockdown surprisingly was very good. Like even on the lateral containment here in the forefoot, you can see the rubber coming up, pretty much encompassing the entire side of the shoe here in the forefoot, right? And then here in the heel, we do have a crazy amount of, first of all, the foam, right? This plastic piece and an internal TPU, or I guess the external heel counter, sorry. So here in the heel, you're covered. Here in the forefoot, you're covered. Midfoot, not too much going on, but you don't need that if you're contained here in the front and back of the shoe, right? So your foot's not coming out of the footbed at all. Even if you're a bigger dude, I mean, this is pretty dang supportive, you know what I mean? As far as like my foot moving inside of the shoe, again, like it was adequate. Like my foot wasn't like moving crazy, but I was playing with this shoe as well as, you know, like the AE2s and the AE1s, because I was testing all these shoes out in my rotation. And this shoe, I mean, on the AE2 just felt way stiffer for the material. The Shai 1, it got softer, and, you know, same thing with the Sabrina 3, right? So if you tried the Sabrina 3, it's gonna feel pretty similar as far as the upper goes to the Shai 1. It just feels a little bit more, I guess, like cozy and a little bit thicker, but kind of similar, pretty similar, right? So a lateral containment, very nice. Lateral stability, also surprisingly, I didn't really have any terrible issues because there's no freaking outrigger. Like, why didn't you add an outrigger? You know what I mean? But I guess, I mean, I don't know, but I didn't have any terrible issues with it. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't feel like I was gonna roll my ankle or anything. So that felt pretty nice. Overall heel lockdown feels pretty nice. So yeah, supporting lockdown feels pretty dang good for me. Again, not the most supportive feeling shoe. Like if you're comparing it to like the most supportive shoe that you can get right now, but it still has adequate support. And I would say if you were to compare, it's a little bit more supportive and a little bit more rigid feeling than like the Sabrina 3 Jaw 2, you know what I mean? Like this is a little bit softer, the upper is a little bit softer, but for the Shai 1, I would say just a tiny bit stiffer for the upper and also for like underneath your foot as well. So yeah, there is a supporting lockdown there. Moving on to the weight of the shoe, the Shai 1 is not super duper light, you know what I mean? I'm guessing like 13 something ounces. Yeah, 13.95 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 14.1 ounces, right? So, yeah, that's freaking heavy, guys. And this shoe does not feel super duper lightweight. It does feel pretty responsive though, you know what I mean? Because the cushion is pretty stiff. The overall upper and the overall shoe does feel a little bit more like, it does feel adequate for support, you know, and lockdown felt pretty good. And the traction was really good when I was playing on a clean court. So when I was playing on that clean court, I felt extremely quick. You know what I mean? Like I had good stops. It felt good for like step backs, you know, cutting, going to the basket, you know, doing like a pull-up jumper. It all felt really nice and responsive. It just didn't feel super lightweight. You know what I mean? Like super minimal and super lightweight. Again, if you're comparing it to like the Sabrina 3, the Zap 3, a shoe that feels extremely lightweight, the Tatum 4, you know what I mean? But, you know, once I started playing on like the dustier courts, I felt super not responsive, obviously, because I was sliding around all over the place. So, yeah, there is the weight there. That kind of sucks that it is that heavy, you know what I mean? And moving on to the ventilation, nope. This shoe does not feel great for ventilation because obviously you do have that shroud and the airflow through this upper isn't the best. And moving on to the aesthetics, it looks amazing. Like, I feel like this is the most commented shoe. Like when I go to the gym, a lot of people were like asking me, are those the Shais? You know, how do they feel? And I got a lot of, you know, people asking me about the Jaw 3s as well when they came out too. But I feel like the Shais, people just know. You know what I mean? I don't know why, but yeah, it looks great too. It looks amazing. I love the design. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, it's okay. It's okay. It definitely isn't my favorite shoe to play in though. You know what I mean? Like cushion, lackluster, traction, a little bit lackluster, especially on a dust performance. But when I was playing on a clean court, it was very nice, right? The upper is okay. No, I don't mind it too much, especially once I broke it and got super soft. But it is also a pretty heavy shoe. You know what I mean? So in my personal opinion, again, Sabrina 3 will be better. You know, it has better cushion while also having better court feel, right? It has better traction, picks up less dust. It still picks up dust, but less dust, right? It's affected by dust a lot less. And the upper, way thinner, but still has adequate support. I would say, you know, comparing these two, this shoe has a little bit more support, but this is still good for me for support. You know what I mean? Another shoe that's a little bit better for me in my personal opinion is the Jaw 3. It has better cushion, it has better traction, especially on dust, but still picks up dust, you know what I mean? It's a little bit inconsistent, but I would say it's better on dust performance than the Shai 1, you know what I mean? It has better support, you know? Lateral stability isn't the best in the Jaw 3, but it wasn't like a deal breaker for me, you know what I mean? So in my personal opinion, there are a lot of other shoes that are better than the Shai 1s, but again, this is a pretty solid shoe, especially for a guard. If you want that more like stiffer, responsive feel, especially from the cushioning setup. But again, it's a pretty lackluster cushioning setup. So, yeah, that about wraps up my performance review of the Shai 1. Again, I did enjoy playing in these shoes. It wasn't terrible, but I did have some bad days. And again, I was never really like super wowed by these. You know what I mean? So, again, if you guys want to cop, I try to leave in the free link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.